Okay, got a quick screencast here of a situation I ran into a shoot of a local high school volleyball team. Did some headshots, and looking at the images in the LCD, they looked good, but when I got them home, I noticed uh, there was some light pattering on the background, and it emphasized the shadows, and you could see sort of the edge of the background here and the seams. Uh, Not too great. This is the finished photo here, and yeah, there's a lot of ways you can do this. Pretty simple to do in Photoshop, but the key here is to do it in a workflow that you can crank through a bunch of these, because I took a bunch of headshots and didn't want to have my hourly rate go down to nothing because I was spending all my time in post. Yes, I should have done it in camera, but unfortunately the LCD failed me, and or my eyes failed me, one or the other. But let's get into it and take a look at how I did that. Going over to Photoshop, um, there's a lot of ways you could do this. You could pick a sample of color, paint the dark areas, but what'll happen is it'll get real blotchy, because if you notice, this background is a very subtle gradient of a light gray around where that umbrella is hitting her, and then it falls off down here in the shadows. So if you try painting, you're going to get a blotchy effect because you can't mimic that gradient. You could clone, but again, you could do that, but it's going to take a lot of time. So the quickest way I found to do this is just recreate that gradient on another layer, uh, creating a new layer, and using the gradient tool, um, we mimic that same gradient. The start point is where the light is greatest, hitting the background right around the subject's face, and then the end point of the gradient is down here in the deeper shadows where the fall off is the greatest. Um, Once you do that, we can create our new background layer or gradient. The light here, fall off is max right around her shoulder. Creates this gradient, so here's our background. But if you notice, sort of see that pattern in there? Happens sometimes with these real subtle gradients. So what I found that pretty easy to uh, break that up is to add a little bit of noise. All I'm doing is adding some monochromatic uniform noise at 1%. Basically, it's just enough to put a random pattern in there to break it up, but not so much that it looks noisy. And it's fine enough that you don't notice it. So if you notice, that smoothed out that background. Uh, so now what we do is we put that, duplicate that background layer and put the gradient behind it, like so. And now we just put a layer mask here, and take your brush, and I just put a real low flow just so that the the transition between the foreground image and then the background that we're pulling through is pretty subtle. Got a good feathering on the brush, so if you could see that as I paint over those dark spots, the color's matching pretty well. It falls off with the actual background, and I get a good match. And it's real quick. Even down here, getting down in there, since the gradient is matching the background, I don't have to worry about that blotchiness. I can even pick up some of these stray hairs that are highlighted by the rim light there, clean that up, and clean this up here. Again, really quick. Um, you know, in a round trip, I think the round trip between Lightroom and Photoshop, took longer for me to load the image up into Lightroom than it actually took me to throw that new layer in there. So I was able to get through those headshots real quick, not spend a lot of time on it, and maximize my workflow. So just a little trick. Yeah, it probably only works on smooth backgrounds, but I'm sure this is a situation that's not too uncommon. But but it's a lesson learned, and I just wanted to share. Thanks a lot.